The Steve Lobby Agency presents the Christian Publishing Show, a podcast for writers who want to advance Christ's kingdom using the written word. Here's your host, Thomas Umstadt Jr.
It's hard to read the label when you're standing inside the bottle. This is why almost all successful authors are in a writer's group. Whether it was Tolkien and C.S. Lewis sitting in an English pub talking about fantasy stories, or a social distanced mastermind meeting that meets on Zoom, writers write better when they are in community with other writers. Now, many beginning writers are not in a writer's group, and most of them give the same excuse. There's no writer's group near me, or I don't know how to start a writing group. Well, we have a special guest to help with those excuses. I mean questions, but I really mean excuses. She is a multiple award-winning CBA best-selling author of both fiction and nonfiction works, and she's also the president of Word Weavers International, established for writers by writers in 1997, and the director of the Florida Christian Writers Conference and the North Georgia Christian Writers Conference. Eva Marie Everson, welcome to the Christian Publishing Show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I've got another excuse that we hear a lot.
Okay.
I'm afraid somebody will steal my work.
Oh. Yes, that one I can debunk right now. So if any of you are worried about that, what readers read is the author's voice. It's not your idea. There's only about 100 ideas out there, and they've all been done already. And some people say there's only 12 ideas out there.
Yes, I've even heard as little as 9. Yes.
Yeah, and in Hollywood, there's really only one. Like every successful Hollywood movie follows the same formula with the same 3 characters. So don't worry about your idea being stolen because your idea isn't nearly as unique as you think it is. Well,
and also because we all have our own ideas and we are working to perfect those. And if I stole every idea I heard, that's all I would be doing all day, and I would never develop my own ideas, which is obviously where my focus is going to be. In fact, I've 2 little quick stories. Somebody was sharing with me their idea at a writers conference. It was so fabulous. I looked at her and I said, "This idea would be so much better if I had come up with it." And we just laughed, because it's definitely hers. But another one that really excited me, I had an idea years ago for a children's book. Now, I'm not a children's book writer, so, ixnay that. But it was an adorable idea. So it just kind of got tossed into the back of my brain. I was meeting with a children's book writer at a writers conference, and she had a love for something that reminded me of the idea. And as she was talking, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is her idea. I mean, this is my idea, but this is her book. And so I said to her, I'm going to give you just an idea and you can run with it if you want to. If you don't, that's fine. And I told her, and she took it to a publishing house, and they're wanting to run it as a series of children's books. And I'm so excited for her because even though it was my idea, it really wasn't meant for me. It was meant for me to pass on to her. So
I have been giving away free ideas for novels for years at writers' conferences, on podcasts, and so far no one has taken me up on any of them. And I'm going to share it right now. And in case any of you want to take this, blogs, you can schedule blogs to be posted in the future. Mm-hmm. Which means someone can die and still be blogging from the grave because they'd scheduled the blog post to come out in the future, which is a perfect element for a thriller where clues to a mystery get revealed publicly, but at random events in the future by a dead guy. How has no one stolen this idea?
I don't know. I mean, this sounds like an Alton Gansky book. Oh, my goodness.
But here's the point. It's really hard to get other people excited about your idea. While your idea seems so obvious to you, getting even one agent or one publisher excited about the idea is a lot of work. And don't be afraid of somebody stealing your idea at a writer's group. But Eva, I do have to ask, how did you get started with writing groups in the first place?
Well, in 1997, in the early part of 1997, I was writing for a children's ministry, which I know I just said that's not my thing, and it's not, and it still tickles me that this is how I started in this industry, was writing for a children's ministry. But that's where I was, and this particular ministry, they had like a full staff. They had actors, they had their own band. They had a stage. I mean, it was so creative and over the top for children. And obviously a part of a mega church in a larger city. And so every week, the director would contact me and say, next week's theme is going to be, and I would, write. He'd tell me basically what he wanted. I would write it just out of my own little brain, send it to him. He would do an edit, send it back to me. I would do a rewrite. Boom, it went to the actors. And the next week we did another one. And so I was a part of this mega church, and someone said to me, I heard that there is a group that is going to start out of this church, Writers for Writers. It's kind of a critique group or something. And she said, you should go. Well, I had the address. I was driving to the address. I got lost. No big shock there. I get lost walking around in my own home. And so I happened to see the friend who told me about the group. I happened to see her house. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go have a cup of coffee with Laura and just call it a day. So I go in, have this cup of coffee, and I'm saying to her, no, I'm not. I'm just not going to go. I'm not going to worry about it. And she said, listen, you are like 2 streets over from this house. She drew me a map on a napkin, said, go. I went, I walked in. I was the 5th person in this 5-person group to walk in. And so we sat around and we chatted about how can we help each other. And, we're going to get together once a month. And it was a really rough beginning. But eventually there were about 10 of us, then maybe 12, 13 of us, whatever. But we were still floundering because we really didn't have any sense of direction as to what we were doing. And then one month, Brian Davis, who is a YA writer, spec writer, came to our group. He was just passing through town. He was not staying, but he was just passing through town. And he just threw out this idea, hey, if you do this. And so I thought, you know what, that's kind of a really good idea. And then the following couple of months, things, we still weren't formulating it, but we were going down.
Wait, what was his idea? What did he suggest?
Well, I'll tell you in just a moment.
Okay.
I'll tell you in just a moment. We were going down in our attendance. And so one month it was me and one other person. And by this point I was a published author, because that was kind of on the horizon anyway. And I just thought, I had like 1 book out, and I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. And so I'm driving home, and I will never forget this. I call this my Constantine moment. I was driving over I-4 on State Road 436 here in the Orlando area, got stopped because of traffic. We were like just bottlenecked. And the sun came down and hit the hood of my car and, made the sign of the cross. I'm telling you, it was like a Constantine moment. And all of a sudden, the idea that Brian gave us and everything that God had in store for us just joined together. I got on the phone that evening. I called everybody who had been involved in the beginning of it. And I said, okay, God has told me what we need to do for this group. Well, we weren't even called Word Weavers at the time. God has shown me what we need to do with this group. We're going to take Brian's idea of the sandwich method, which means anybody can bring a work as long as it's 1,500 words. The person to the right reads the piece. The person to the left leads the critique. So we're sitting like in a square or in a circle around a table. You say something positive. You give the meat of the critique, and then you say something positive. And we do not, claw at each other or anything like that. This is all about helping us to get published. Now, I am now the president of this group. You are the vice president. You are the treasurer. You are the, we had no money, but hey, we might need a treasurer. But that was the next thing, is we are going to start charging dues. And as God just laid all this out in front of me, I kept thinking, this is insane. We are gonna fall flat on our faces. The first month after I made this announcement and was calling everybody back in, we doubled in our attendance. And then slowly but surely, we started drawing people from all over the state. People at writers conferences, like editors, agents, etc., were noticing our members, like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's working. And then Jerry Jenkins stepped in and said, hey, I want to talk more about what you guys are doing. I want to actually put some money into it. and Jerry helped us grow it across the country and across the world. And then he backed away and he was like, okay, it's all yours now. And so we have now been in existence almost 24 years. March will be 24 years, and we are now over 1,000 members strong. We have both in-person critique and online critiques, which means we use Zoom. That's what we're using currently. And we own a writers conference. So it's exactly what God showed me was going to happen. I just had to sit back and do whatever he told me to do. But I think that's why our formula works. We're all about building up the writer, not ripping the writer to shreds. We don't do that. I don't allow it.
And what I like about that is that it's very focused on craft. A lot of writers groups just have speakers come in and speak. And it's like, you can get that on a podcast, like the Christian Publishing Show or the Novel Marketing Podcast, right? Those exact same speakers you can listen to at your own pace, in your own car. There's not a lot special about somebody speaking at a writers group. And I say this as somebody who speaks at writers groups. Writers groups frequently invite me to speak, and I'm happy to come and speak. But I when I come, I know that I'm not as valuable to those authors as they would be to each other, doing exactly what you're saying, reading their work, giving them some positive feedback, and giving them some constructive feedback. And that's
Absolutely.
what, if you look at the Inklings, that's what they were doing. They were very good friends, and they loved each other very deeply, but they were also very critical. And it's interesting because C.S. Lewis has a glowing endorsement of the Lord of the Rings. In fact, for years, and even like a copy I bought like 10 years ago still had C.S. Lewis's endorsement on it.
Yeah.
Tolkien refused to endorse the Chronicles of Narnia because he didn't like it. And he was very honest with Tolkien with Lewis that he didn't like it.
Don't like it. Yeah.
It's like, because Tolkien didn't like allegory, and Narnia is very much an allegory. It's very on the nose. Tolkien didn't care for that. But I think both books were stronger as a result of that sharing. And the thing is, Tolkien had read it many times, right? He'd been reading the earlier drafts, and even though he didn't like it, didn't mean he wasn't constructive. And they share some place names and other things. I could talk about Lewis and Tolkien for a long time.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's exactly what sometimes we get into our own heads too much when we're in our work. And there are many times when, like, for example, this morning I had an online group that's my online group that I'm a member of. And sometimes it's a matter of, okay, guys, I can't make this sentence work. I don't know what it is. And the thing is I've looked at it and looked at it and looked at it. And one of the members of my group can look at it and say, oh, well, that's an easy fix. And it wasn't for me. But then when they lay it out, it's like, oh, well, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so important. So what would you tell for somebody who's like, I can't find any good writing groups? How do you find a writing group that fits you? Because not all writing groups are for all writers.
This is very true. And the wonderful thing about the traditional groups, what we call the traditional groups, are the ones that meet in person. And of course, we've had a challenge this year, but the ones that meet in person is that there are usually enough people writing in enough genres that you're going to find somebody that you totally connect with, and whose critique you are actually looking forward to. I know that for years when I was in the Orlando group and when I started traveling so much, it became more and more difficult for me to go to the Orlando group. But when there was a particular member who it was so like nitpicky on so many little tiny minute little, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is it's going to make me nuts. But then all of a sudden I realized, oh, I really need this person. I really need this. Sometimes you're looking for the overarching issues. Is this suddenly a character switch, or do you think my voice just changed here from like in this scene from the previous scene, things like that? But then you also need those. Okay, that should be a comma. This should be a semicolon. And also just that those people who can catch those little minute things of, you just shifted voice, you just shifted tense, that most people would never pick up on, except maybe editors and those really serious readers. But that's where the gems are.
Yeah, one thing you do have to be careful of is who you're getting advice from. Steve Lobby's got a classic story of somebody who had sent him a proposal to Enclave Publishing for the space adventure spaceship story that he really liked. He got the 3 chapters and he was like, send me the rest of the manuscript. Well, the guy takes it to his writers group and gets all this feedback from these romance writers who are like, you need to make the captain more in touch with his feelings. You need to have more drama on the bridge, and ended up ruining the book because it's like, that's not what readers of military science fiction, space adventures want to read. They don't want Captain Kirk to be wrestling with his own emotions. They want a Captain Kirk who knows what he wants.
Exactly. And so we do have in online groups, we do have genre specific groups. So if that is your thing, romance writing or spec writing or children's book writing or even article writing, if we don't have that genre for you, we will help you form that genre. So, because the thing is like romance writers know what works for romance. They know those elements that have to be there. Even, like right down to the hero and the heroine have to meet within X number of pages and that kind of thing. So, if that's what you want to do, then that's where we can get you. And that's the glory of having online groups and such large groups. The other thing is, and I say this often as I'm leading my leaders and then the leaders are then, leading the members, is if this is not your genre and you don't understand it, hey, just stick to the technical stuff. Don't try to speak outside your genre. Somebody else will understand the genre. I mean, it's just bound, bit, and determined to happen. But if you are the only, say, spec writer or the only medical thriller writer in a group of romance writers, you need to find a second group because they may help you with certain things, but they're not going to be able to help you with those genre-specific things.
That's right. A good sentence is a good sentence.
Yes.
Regardless of genre. But a good story really changes because what readers are looking for really changes. The kind of reader who's picking up an Amish book because they're stressed. The world is changing. The world is chaotic, and they just want to escape from all the change and all the chaos and want a nice, slow-paced, relaxing Amish story. They don't want someone to be giving that Amish writer thriller advice on how to make the book more exciting, because they don't want the book to be more exciting, right? They don't want a plague of zombies to come into the Amish village or a bomb to go off or there's suddenly a war going on outside the Amish village, because that's not why they're reading that book. Now, that same reader may, in a different mood or in a different season of their life, want to read a thriller, right? That same reader probably enjoyed reading This Present Darkness back in the day, but that's not what they're reading right now. And that's why kind of knowing your genre is really important, and why getting kind of those macro edits, those big picture edits from somebody in your genre or similar genre, right? It doesn't have to be Amish, but if it's writing for the same audience, I would say is more important or as important as writing for the same genre. And that's why fantasy and sci-fi often get put in the same room together. It's because while there are some fundamental differences, not what you think, but there are fundamental differences between fantasy and sci-fi, particularly when it comes to morality. They are written for the same audience.
Well, and the other thing that we do in Word Weavers is that we are constantly about education, because we are constantly about craft. And so we have a private Facebook group page where all day long we're updating with educational blogs and podcasts, etc., that they can listen to. And so if there happens to be one on writing in the romance genre, I'm not going to be interested in it. I can skip that one. But if there is one that's more for literary fiction or contemporary women's fiction, well, then that's the one I'm going to jump on. Or if there's one for, understanding how to format Bible verses and commentary excerpts in your nonfiction work, well, then that's going to be one somebody else might be interested in. So we are all about that making sure that all the genres are covered within our educational, and then also in our newsletter that goes out once a month.
And this is why the education side is so important. So even though, like, I don't recommend that writers groups, have a teaching every week. It's okay to have teachings from time to time. It's still important to learn those things things that you would learn from a teacher, or better yet, be reading books on craft. I'm a big advocate of reading books on craft. Did you know that the masters of writing share their secrets, and that for just $20, you can buy their secrets per master?
That's right.
It's like, that is an unbelievable bargain. You can get On Writing by Stephen King for $20 or less, right? It's probably on sale right now.
$4.99.
Yeah, you get the ebook for even cheaper. You can get the Audible credit for one credit, right? It's an incredible bargain, and yet many people aren't reading those books. But one of the benefits of reading lots of craft books is that as you are more educated on writing and what good writing is, it helps you interpret the feedback. Because you may be getting bad feedback from somebody to the left of you who doesn't know what they're talking about. Some people, they don't know what they're talking about. And some people don't know that they don't know what they're talking about.
So, well, and you have to make sure that you are looking into, okay, who is this person? What have they done? What are their credentials? That's something else that we also look at. And one of the things that I say quite often is please don't hand your manuscript to your 7th grade grammar teacher, because you're going to find out that the rules of grammar do not always apply to the rules of writing, or the rules of publishing. We tend to be more conversational in our writing now. We're trying to draw readers in. We're not trying to be academic. So those are the things that we are teaching, and it's really constantly about honing the craft, but understanding that the craft changes. What would have sold 25 years ago, 50 years ago, 150 years ago wouldn't fly today, and it may just circle back around, but we have to be on top of that, and that is part of what Word Weavers tries to do.
Yeah, a genre that's gone out of fashion right now that I imagine will come back in about 10 or 15 years is hagiography. So hagiography is a form of biography about saints and leaders of the church. And back in the 90s, it was really popular to write these biographies of Christian heroes. And the biographies never featured anything that they did wrong. Didn't talk about their struggles or their sins. So they weren't actually biographies. They were hagiographies. Like what you would write for St. Thomas or St. Peter or any of the other saints in the canon of saints. And that is right currently is not very relatable. People want to know about the struggles. They want to read a biography rather than a hagiography. But we're going to be more idealistic in the future. The pendulum theory of culture indicates that come 10, 15 years from now, hagiography is going to be back in style. So there's nothing new under the sun. And it's not like, oh, this is gone forever. It's like, no, it's gone for now.
Yeah.
It'll come back. Yeah.
Get your manuscript ready.
So what would you tell somebody who's like, okay, this is all great, but I've never been to a writer's group ever in my life, and I'm terrified. Like, the idea of going to a writer's group is just so scary to me. Like, because I feel like once you go to your first writer's group, going to your second one's a lot easier. It's that first AA meeting where you have to admit to everybody else that you're an alcoholic. That's a really hard one. And it gets easier after that. So how do you go to your first meeting? What tips do you have?
You know what? Just go and say, I'm just here to observe, to see if this is for me. We allow you 2 visits to come. You don't have to join to come. You can just come and watch. After the second visit, as I say, it's time to fish or cut bait. So we're not going to have you come and get all this free information and inspiration, and then you're not going to participate, because part of it. Now, if you are observing, we do not allow you to critique or be critiqued. Obviously, you're just observing. But part of the gift in a group like Word Weavers is that not only are you receiving something, you're giving something. So you may say something that you're saying to person A, but person C is the one who needs to hear it the most. So it's just this free flow of information that you can come in, you can sit in twice, so it's 4 hours for Word Weavers anyway. And you don't have to make a decision right away. We may not be for you. We're not for everybody, and I don't think that we are. But if we are for you,
and you're not the only organization of your type, there are other gatherings of writers groups. I know ACFW has local chapters, and there's a lot of regional writers group networks, and some churches have writers group. My church for a time had 2 different writers groups. They had a Saturday writers group and a Wednesday writers group. Now, I'm in a weird town full of artists and writers, so that's not uncommon here. But it is, you may be surprised at how many different writers groups there are.
And you can be a member of more than one, because what you will get and what you can give and what you can glean from one group may be different than another. So don't think, oh, I can only be a member of one. Absolutely not. You have to also understand the personalities of the people, the gifts of the writers, etc. But always remember that at the end of the day, when you go home with your work, it's still your baby. You can make the decisions as to which way you want to go with it. However, if you're in a group of 8, let's say, and you're the 8th person, 7 people have told you the same thing about that paragraph. You may want to think about that paragraph.
It's like the guy who calls his wife. He's like, honey, everybody down driving on this road's going the wrong way. And she hears from the radio, there's a man driving the wrong way down the highway. It's like, right. No, these people aren't driving the wrong way. You're driving the wrong way. And you're exactly right about being a member of different groups. I host mastermind groups. And in many ways, they're the photo negative of Word Weavers. We don't cover craft at all. These are groups all about me helping people, sell more books and get published, right? So a lot of indie authors are going through the publishing process and they want to be able to ask me questions, and a lot of published authors are marketing their books and trying to boost their sales, and they're asking me questions, they're asking each other questions, and it's very much on the kind of mechanics of being an author, not on the how to put together a better sentence, because I'm not your man.
Right. And so what we do in Word Weaver is we also look for people like you, because then somebody's going to say, okay, now what do I do? I've got this book, I've done this, I've done that, I'm about to be published, or I'm ready for that next step. What do I do? And we have that list of names. Here's where you need to go next. I think I just think that's as critical as the rest of it.
Yeah. So walk us through your transition to online groups. I'd imagine you were dabbling in online groups in 2019, like everybody was, and then 2020 happened, and suddenly, almost all of your groups go online, depending on what part of the country they're in.
Yeah. Well, we were not dabbling in 2019. We were full force in 2019. The way it happened was this. Some of our Word Weavers chapters, which are multiple genred chapters, wanted to have focus groups. So can we also meet on another night that just focuses on this genre? Well, of course you can. So in Word Weavers Orlando, we had a novel group, and there were 6 of us who got together once a month, just like we did at Word Weavers, but this was specific to our works of fiction. And one of our members moved to Ohio, and we were very upset because she was such a viable member of our group. And I was speaking to a friend of mine in Israel on Skype, just, within days of her saying we're moving. And I thought, wait a minute, why can't we just Skype her in? So we started Skyping her in. The following year, which was like 2012, 2013, we were at the Florida Christian Writers Conference, which we own, Word Weavers owns. And I'm telling the co-director at that time, Mark Hancock, about how we were Skyping Shelley in and blah, 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 blah. Well, a gentleman named Bruce Brady walked in, sat down, he's listening. And I said, I don't know why we can't do this with other, why can't we just form online groups? And Bruce said, I think you should be able to do that. And he started kind of laying out the particulars. And I looked at him and I said, hey, Bruce, you want to handle this? He said, sure, I'll handle it. And so Bruce helped us launch Word Weavers online groups. We grew so quickly that we had to bring in an assistant for him, which was a God thing, because then Bruce contracted cancer. He was, in the throes of chemotherapy, etc. Susan became more than just his right hand. She became the hand, both hands. And then when he got better, she stepped back, and then the cancer returned, and unfortunately it took Bruce from us, but it gained heaven an extra soul, and so Susan Simpson now runs that. We have close to 50 online groups, and we are actually about to draw it to a stop. We can no longer handle any more than what we have, because we also then have to, we have to have the leader, and then we have to have what we call mentors, and then each group has a president, has its own specific leader. And until you've got enough people trained to do this, you can't do it well. So I said, look, we've hit the wall. This is where we stop. So you can still join online groups. If we don't have a place for you, you can still be a member. We'll hold your membership fees. And then once we have an opening in a group, we'll just slip you right in.
So you're a victim of your own success. You've gotten as big as you can scale. And like you said, if Word Weavers doesn't have a group for you, or if all of their groups are free, there are a lot of groups out there. And that actually leads us to our sponsor, which is the Christian Writers Market Guide, which is the ultimate resource, not just of writers groups, which it has quite a few of, but also writers conferences, including the Florida Christian Writers Conference is in there. And it's a way of keeping up with what's going on in the publishing world, but also keeping up with what's going on at publishing companies. As editors move from company to company and agents move from agency to agency, it is all updated in the Christian Writers Market Guide, and you can find out more at christianwritersmarketguide.com. And that was our smoothest transition into an ad read we've ever done. Eva Marie, real quick, tell us where people can find out more about you.
You can go to Eva Marie Everson author.com. If you just go to evamarieeverson.com, unfortunately, I have a name squatter, and until I trademark my name, which is going to take time, money, and an attorney, I can't do anything about it. But that is not me. This person writes about juicing and new beds and things like that, new furniture that she's bought. That's not me. But it's somebody who definitely was trying to insinuate that she was me. We've at least been able to investigate that far. But it's Eva Marie Everson author.com, and you just type in in any social media, Eva Marie Everson. I think I'm the only one in the world, and that's why we knew that this was a name squatter. So you can find me at Instagram and Twitter, although I don't tweet a lot, but Facebook and places like that, Pinterest, etc.
All right, and we will have links to all of those places in the show notes, as well as a link to Word Weavers if you want to see if there is a group in your area or an online group with room for you to join. I highly recommend that you join a writers group. And Word Weavers is one of the advantages of a paid group is that they stick around. They're, continuing, often with free groups, the person who's donating all of their time for free. They typically get successful. In my experience, that generosity and all of that experience they get ends up making their craft better, and they end up getting so successful with writing that they don't have time to run the group for free anymore, and they stop. And so the benefit of a paid group is that that's less likely to happen.
Well, and also because when you pay for something, you tend to treat it better. You tend to appreciate it more, than something that someone gives you. In fact, when we were making the decision to charge dues, and let me just say this, one of the things that we do with our money is we send people to conferences, because we are a not-for-profit. We can't hoard our money. And so what we do is we make sure with that money that we're getting people who have done the work, but maybe financially just you can't swing the cost. We make sure they get to those conferences, and then we offer scholarships, et cetera, through Word Weavers International, and to our own conference as well as to other conferences. But many years ago, there was a young woman who I was helping. She was, a single mom. She was trying to get her feet on the ground, started again in life, and she had this very important job interview. I gave her a very expensive jacket of mine to go with her dress slacks and a nice top, and she got the job. And when she came back, she actually came over to get something or give me something. I walked back out to the car, and I had said to her, you know what? That jacket was so, quote, lucky for you. I want you to keep it. And I went to put whatever it was in the car, and I saw that very expensive suit jacket wadded up in the floorboard with like shoe prints on it. And I said, I just blurted out, "Oh my gosh, the jacket." I didn't say my jacket, it's now her jacket. And she said, "Oh yeah, I need to take that to be cleaned." And I thought, I would have never thrown that jacket on the floor and put my feet on it. But the thing is she didn't pay for it, so she didn't know how expensive it was. She didn't understand the quality of what she had on her shoulders. But if she had paid for it, she would have. So when we made that decision, okay, how are we going to raise the money to get people to these conferences, etc., to bring in speakers, to do these kinds of things, for those times that we do have speakers, because Steve Lobby has been one of our speakers in the past. How are we going to do that? We're going to charge dues. And my first thought was, oh no, people will drop like flies. But instead they said, oh, this must have value. And they joined. And listen, we're very reasonable, $45 a year. And with that $45 a year, if you come to the Florida Christian Writers Conference, you get a $50 discount. So it works.
So there you go. Well, that very well said. And, as it says in the Bible, where your money is, there your heart will be also. And so
yes,
there's a benefit to spending money on your writing career. If you're wanting to be more committed to your writing career, it's important to spend some money on it, right? Buy some books on craft.
That's right.
And then read those books on craft. Well, anyway, Eva Marie Everson, thank you so much for joining us today on the Christian Publishing Show.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Christian Publishing Show. For more information and to get episodes delivered to your phone automatically, visit christianpublishingshow.com.